Alright, I'm going to see if I can resolder on these leads for the balances. It looks like on one of my Lipos, as you can see here, a Turnigy 5.0. It looks like vibration just shook it loose. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and solder it back on. I can tell because of the wire placement that it belongs right here, so I'm going to solder it back in the same place. I don't suggest you try this if you don't know where the wire went, or you're not familiar with soldering, or you're not comfortable soldering. These things are volatile. You don't want them to blow because you do something wrong. So just be careful. As you can see, here's your basic two cell pack. So there's one cell, there's the second cell, so you can see them both there. Here's basically how they're wired in this particular case. Red goes to red, black goes to black, and then you have the combination. Basically the neutral is what I refer to it as. I know there's probably a better or more appropriate term for it, but that's what I refer to it as, which basically kind of leads both batteries. So when you charge, it charges, you know, according to the lines there that it's connected to. So anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm going to sit there and see if I can get this resoldered back onto this point right here, so that way I can continue to use my balanced charger. And the reason I know there's a problem is when I was running my battery tester, it came up saying that it's reading 8 volts, but it's only showing one cell. So I knew there was something wrong, so that's why I decided to open up the pack before I discard it. And here's what I can talk. I'm going to try and cover it so it's not so noisy. Okay, there you can see it's a 2-cell pack. It's reading 8.2, but only 4 volts on one cell and 8 on the other, and that's not possible. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to resolder it, and hopefully those numbers will level out because of the way it's reading. So we'll see what happens, and if it continues to read like that, well then I got to soak the battery in salt water and then discard of it once it discharges completely. So hopefully I won't have to do that, and I can continue to use this battery as is. So we'll see what happens. Let me see if I can resolder this. Alright, I don't use an electric one. I use a butane type soldering, so that way I can use it out in the field. You can take off the tips and do open flame. You can put tips on it so you have a controlled point. So in this case here, I'm going to try and use the control point. As you can see, it's starting to get red hot in there with the flame that's in there. So it took me a bit to start it because unfortunately my flint here was running out, so I had to do it with a match, and then it finally started up. So right now I'm just basically letting the tip get warm, and then once it's warm, because I like for it to be really, really hot before I will, because I want to do this fast and as fast as I can so it doesn't generate too much heat. So I'm going to let it heat up, and then I'll be back. Alright, I'm going to try and do this now. I got this pinch with a pair of forceps. Hopefully this is now hot enough. Tining it so that we have some solder here at the tip, and hopefully this will be all it takes to get all this here. Okay, that took a little longer than I thought, and then I like. Alright, so you can see I resoldered it back on. Now I had to do a big blob of solder just because it kept breaking and kept breaking, so I had to put a really thick one, and I'm hoping it'll close just fine. I'm going to put some probably liquid tape on it just to ensure that it stays protected, but you know, if you have to do this, please be careful, because this took me a lot longer than I wanted to, and I don't like for these battery packs to get hot. They're warm, but nothing more than they would get if you were using them. So I tried to keep very cautious with that, as I say, because I don't use electric. I use a flame style solderer. So anyway, I hope this helps anyone out, and hopefully you will never have to do this, but if you do, at least you've seen it done once, so that you have an idea of what it's going to take. Alright, I forgot to mention before I closed out, remember I showed you before with my little meter that there was something wrong with the wires. That's how I figured it out. Well, now I'm going to plug it in so you can see that it's going to show 2 cells, all of it total of 8.28, and then it's 4.13 and 4.15, which is a little off because of that wire being there. My guess is during the charging cycle, that's when it went bad. And before I used it, so this is a fully charged battery I worked on. Before I got a chance to use it, I noticed when I tested it before I put in the battery that this was reading crazy, so I didn't use the battery as a precaution. So anyway, I want to show you how this worked, and then I'm going to close it up, and then I'll come back and show you what the finished product looks like. Alright, I have it all in there. Again, I wasn't able to make it as smooth as I like, and I'm sorry my camera does not zoom in very well. But I just wanted to show you basically what happens from here is, once I have everything there to where I feel comfortable with it, I like to add liquid tape, especially in this case here with that big blob being like that. So I'm simply going to add liquid tape to this portion, and hopefully I will not have to solder this again. And if so, at least I know that this here is cleaned up. And if I ever have to come back and tape it again, if I come back and solder it again, I can. It's just a matter of scraping off the liquid tape wherever I'm going to work at, and then solder and do that. So it's more steps. So that's why I don't really recommend doing the liquid tape if you don't have to. Electric tape works just as well, but I didn't like the way that looked. So I wanted to make sure that it was really protected so it doesn't touch and get damaged. So here's what it looks like after the liquid tape. And then all I'm simply going to do is close the battery pack up and then tape it closed, so that way it'll look like your normal battery again. Alright, so now I've put it back together. You saw that I had put the liquid tape in there. And then what I do is I take electrical tape, put it around the ends, pinch it together, so I can still read the right voltages and whether it's a 2-cell. And although you can tell by the wires, 2 cells have 3 wires, 3 cells have 4 wires, so on and so forth. So you can always tell by looking at the wires, but anyway, so I can still see the labels, and this is now up and running again. I'm going to put it inside my handy dandy firebox here. So it's an ammo box, is where I keep my Lipo batteries, so that way in case anything happens, the firebox is closed and they just burn in there all by themselves under lock and key, so nothing happens. If anything happens in there, it should stay in that fire rated box. So anyway, later.